Edward VI was born on October 12, 1537, at Hampton Court Palace, in Middlesex, England. It was one of the many palaces owned and built by his father. Edward's father was King Henry VIII of England, and his mother was Jane Seymour, his father's third wife. Edward had two older half-sisters, Mary, whose mother was Catherine of Aragon, and Elizabeth, whose mother was Anne Boleyn. Both of his sisters were present for his christening, which took place on October 15. At his christening, he would be proclaimed both Duke of Cornwall and Earl of Chester. Although the birth itself had seemed a normal one, the Queen nevertheless died 12 days later from presumed complications of the delivery. The assumption that Edward was a sickly child has more recently been decided by historians as not altogether true. Although he may have suffered a life-threatening quartan fever when he was 4 years old, he may actually have been a normal, healthy child. Edward's education was extensive. Placed in his own household, Edward was initially cared for by Margaret Bryan, then Blanche Herbert. King Henry demanded absolute cleanliness, and exceedingly high standards of security, for his only son. When he turned 6 years old, his education would begin in earnest, with lessons from Richard Cox and John Check. His lessons included languages, French, Spanish, and Italian, in addition to scriptures and philosophy, liberal sciences, geometry, and learning to play several musical instruments. Edward would also show a particular aptitude towards monetary affairs. It would appear, as his education continued with his sister Elizabeth's own tutor, that an amount of competitiveness emerged between Edward and his sister Elizabeth, and her own academic prowess. Edward's reign as king would begin on January 28, 1547. He was 9 years old. He was collected from his home in Hertford, and escorted to Enfield, where Lady Elizabeth was living. Together they were told of their father's death. King Edward was then escorted to the Tower of London, where he was welcomed with much pomp and ceremony. The following day, the nobles of the realm made their obeisance to King Edward VI of England. His father Henry VIII was laid to rest next to his beloved wife Jane, as he had wished. Although Edward was crowned on February 20, 1547, at Westminster Abbey, he was obviously too young to take the reins of the country unto his own hand, so his uncle Edward Seymour was appointed Lord Protector, until his execution, and John Dudley replaced him, not as Lord Protector, but Lord President of the Council, and Great Master of the King's household. In 1553 King Edward VI became ill. Concerned for his realm and his crown, his father's wishes before his death, to secure the succession, meant that King Edward did not want to see his half-sister Mary succeed him. Under his father's rule, both Mary and Elizabeth were proclaimed illegitimate, which meant they had no claim to the throne. This left Edward with only one course. Lady Jane Grey, as a cousin once removed, and who had married the Duke of Northumberland's younger son, Lord Guilford Dudley, would succeed King Edward to the throne, as the only exception to the male rule. King Edward's health deteriorated further, but he took comfort in the knowledge his device for the succession was in place. In April he decided to move to Greenwich Palace. He was seen several times by the public, sitting in his window. At Greenwich Palace, on July 6, 1553, King Edward VI lost his battle for life. His body was laid to rest at Henry VII's Lady Chapel, at Westminster Abbey.